Police continue their investigation after the discovery of body parts at a house in Soweto. The remains were found in a refrigerator of a man, apparently by his partner. Our reporter Ahmed Kajee is in Protea Glen and joins us now live. Ahmed, it's a story that has not only shocked Sowetans but shocked South Africans at large. What do we know about what's happened?
Good morning, Paul. It's rather tragic and somber mood out here in Soweto this morning. What we do know so far is that a woman and the suspect were out in the evening spending time at the apartment in the house behind me. I will just take a pan to my right in a few moments time. But what is understood is that the partner and the suspect and his partner were actually spending some time in the evening together, or in the afternoon rather, yesterday, and she more or less had told the suspect, her boyfriend in this instant, that look, she was feeling slightly hungry, and he said, look, well, she's just more or less going to head out to a restaurant or to a takeaway in and around the area and come back with some food. But as he had left, the partner had went into the freezer to perhaps get some food in and around within the household, and that's when the discovery of the body parts was found. What we do understand from reports coming through overnight was that neighbors in and around the area then had come through to the house once the partner had contacted various people in and around the area, and that's when they had confronted the suspect as well. But I think some of the important parts which had come out is that once police had arrived, there is a police and as one of there's a police officer in and around the area as well, who is one of the neighbors, and he had come through as one of the neighbors, as one of the concerned neighbors, to see what was going on. And once the neighbors had got the suspect to open up the freezer, they had then discovered the remains of the particular body parts which were found out in the freezer as well. But an important part to note is that the suspect rather, once he was arrested, actually was left alone for a short period of time in the house before other law enforcement could come through. And during that time, he actually attempted suicide. At the particular time, they say that he had taken a knife and tried to stab himself across the arm and across the upper parts of his body as well. So at the moment, he's actually under medical care out in hospital. So there was that development, not just from the law enforcement aspect, but also from the medical aspect. I'm just going to take a quick step over to my left-hand side. I'll ask my colleague Njabula to maybe just give you a bit of a pan outside. You would be looking at the White House that's directly in front of you. And we had briefly spoken to the owner of the house earlier on. He was pretty distraught, pretty traumatized by the entire incident, which I think any other person would have been in this particular situation. And he says that the body parts were actually found in the house behind his main household. He says that he was renting that out to a tenant, and that's exactly what had transpired overnight. He said it's been very, very difficult indeed. We had tried to maybe just speak to him a bit more to find out if he would be available to speak to us, but understandably so, he said, look, he was in a very, very somber, very traumatized mood, and he wasn't ready to speak to any media or anyone else apart from law enforcement on that front. So we can only understand and perhaps try to relate to what many people in this community must be going through, especially speaking towards the fact that overnight, perhaps just a week and perhaps weeks after we had seen and months of gender-based violence coming through, we obviously wouldn't want to see body recovery parts in a situation like this. So I'm pretty sure we will be seeing law enforcement in and around the area carrying on their patrols, carrying out their operations, and investigations will be continuing in the foreseeable weeks and months ahead.
Ahmed, there are many questions here. I know you don't have most of the answers as to exactly whose body that might have been, the motive behind that body and those parts being in that refrigerator. Have you had a chance at all to speak to some of the neighbors about this 24-year-old suspect? Any sort of characteristics they may have described, or perhaps behavior that they may have noted about him?
So we haven't been able to, we haven't had a chance to speak to any neighbors within the vicinity, understandably, on a Sunday morning, especially after a late night last night. It would be very difficult to speak to anyone in and around the community. Actually coming into the area, not many people knew that this is a development that occurred overnight. So on that front, speaking to many of the neighbors and community members in and around the Protea Glen area has been relatively difficult. But just speaking a bit more to what the owner of the property had told us, he said, look, I mean, understandably so, he said in a situation like this, he had no idea that any of this was taking place. There was no signs untoward about the suspect on that front. So in many ways, this came to a surprise to everyone in and around the community. And I think as much as it has come to a surprise to everyone across the country, when you come through to a situation like this, especially taking place on a Saturday evening, nobody would at any time in any way expect something like this to happen. So I'm pretty sure that the community is very perhaps disturbed by what has taken place, and they will obviously be taking, what their responses will be around security in and around the area would obviously be hiked up with private security in and around the area.
Absolutely. A shocking story there, a developing story that we will continue to monitor. Ahmed Kajee, of course, bringing us up to speed on what transpired overnight and some of the conversations he's had, especially with the owner of the house, of which his tenant, the 24-year-old suspect, was then taken by police. Of course, we do continue to monitor the story. What we do know is that we understand that he will be heading to court depending on his health. That's according to police last night.